Hey, what's up, friends? Nick here with Fancy Pants Media. This is the show that takes everything that has to do with visual marketing and we just give it our all. This is our first Friday morning live, and today we are going to be diving into something I call visual marketing. This is a primer course for those of you who want to really jump into visual marketing. And yeah, I think this is going to be really good. So, if you are here watching on YouTube, drop a comment below. Let me know you're here. I can't see much and I can't hear right now, so if there's no audio, drop that below. Actually, I didn't even turn the chat on. Let me turn that chat on so we can see that. I don't know what happened to my live stream. Let me go back. Just make sure that I'm still cooking here. All right. So today we are talking about visual marketing. It's a primer course. This is going to be really short. The whole thing of why I'm going live is just to test out this setup that I have and see if it's something that can add value, easily. So when we talk about visual marketing, what are we talking about? I just want to break that down for you. And for me, I feel that it's when you leverage how people feel. And I know some people are going to say that's not marketing in any way, shape, or form, but that's how I interpret visual marketing. And there are two aspects to this visual marketing for me. And the first is it's a way to communicate visually. That's what I think this whole visual communication is about. You have to show people something that moves them emotionally to the point where they want to say, I feel included, me too, whatever product, service, or community that you're trying to build. You have to have emotional buy-in from the people that you are serving. And the best way for me and a lot of other people is to communicate visually because just the eyes are a great way to capture somebody's attention. But there's a second part that you have to balance with your visual communication, and it is thinking about collecting data-driven results. So you can't say that this is marketing and just like show a bunch of stuff without measuring. There is a part of marketing that is measuring. And we're not going to focus on that today. We're going to focus on something that's going to help you improve your images. Like I said, this is a visual primer course, and so the thing that we're going to really tackle today is something I like to call visual CLC. So what is that? Visually, it goes like this. It's color, composition, and lighting, or in any of those order. And I think a lot of times when people try and communicate visually, the reason that they mess up their images is because they don't think about these things. If you're watching this is in black and white, and there's a reason why this is in black and white. Is one, because the lighting behind me is a mixed color temperature, and two, it's very dark in color. But when you start to look at things like live streams in black and white, they're so much easier to manage because you can see a lot better. So I want to break down this visual CLC, the color, the lighting, and the composition for you. And if you have any questions for me, drop them in the comments below. And if you always want to hit me up, you can hit me up on Twitter at Nick_Ovaya. Let's jump into this, this visual style of communication, and we are going to do that now. So first thing is color. And I feel like a lot of people who first get their hands like on a DSLR or a camera, whether it's for photo or it's for video, whether you're posting your stuff to Instagram, Snapchat, or making YouTube videos, the first thing I see is that the color temperature is off. Now, an easy way to solve that is go black and white, and nobody's going to know the difference, and they're going to think you're a genius. Like, why is this guy in black and white? Chase Jarvis does it in his live streams, and I see why he does it. Christopher Nolan's first movie was in black and white because he couldn't afford the lighting setup that he really needed. So when you think about these things, when you think about color and how you're going to visually communicate color, you have to be intentional. So the first thing I would tell you to do is to understand your Kelvin white balance. It's so important that you understand your Kelvin white balance. Daylight is at 5,500 or 5,600 Kelvin. When you have incandescent lights, those really orangish orangish lights, they're about 2700. And when you get into those high, deep blues, like past daylight, those can sit anywhere between the 7,000 and the 9,000 color range. If your camera has a Kelvin white balance meter, I would use it. So that way, whether it's in photo or in video, that your color is proper, it's spot on. The second thing I would say is lighting. Now, let me tell you one thing about lighting. Lighting is so important. Right now, this is being lit with natural light, but you have to really think about the lights that you buy. Give me 1 second, because I have these two light boxes right here, and one of them is from IKEA, and it says about 2700 Kelvin. It's about 6.3 watts, and like this thing comes free with almost any light that you get at IKEA. And it's like, oh wow, this is cool. But when you start to see this, if you were to use this in your YouTube videos or your streaming videos, you're going to see that it doesn't match your daylight. So you would essentially have to block out all of your light and then find 2700 Kelvin lights for everything that you do. Now, there's a reason why people use daylight balanced lights, like there's a reason for it. I mean, the reason is because you can mix it with daylight, and you can gel those a lot better than if you were to gel like one of these lights. What I like to use are LIFX lights. Now, LIFX are smart. I don't know what the color index rating is, but they show up pretty well for me. And the reason I like it is because it's Wi-Fi connectivity, and it also has a color range, pretty accurate for what I'm doing for YouTube. If you're a YouTuber, or if you're just doing photos for the gram, LIFX lights, they're not cheap by any means, but what they do is they solve the problem that you can adjust your color temperature and your lighting output very, very easily using your smartphone. It's easy, it's simple, and I highly suggest you check out those LIFX lights. That's one thing. Second thing I would say is light meters rock. If you know how to use a light meter, I highly suggest you pick one up. And the reason is because you can nail your exposure every time. The light meter that comes in your camera isn't always the best, and sometimes it will give a suggestion. If you're on auto mode, when you go to manual mode to actually dial in those settings, things could change. Light meters are a way to go. And lighting, you also want to diffuse your harsh light. You don't want harsh light. Those really, really hard shadows or those really, really bright white spots, you just want to get rid of those. And a great way is to use diffusion. Like a white t-shirt, you can like throw that over a lamp. I've done that over the LIFX lights because they're LEDs, they don't get hot. Just make sure that whatever you're using, it's not going to catch fire, like putting it too close to the light. That's super important. Safety, because you are using lighting and electricity, and but when you diffuse light, it gives your image something soft and nice, and that's what the eye likes to look at. And then finally, the composition. I would say learn your composition, your rule of thirds, your depth of field, and your motion. The rule of thirds, if you can imagine your 16:9 image blocked up into 3 blocks, and you can either put somebody in the center, to the right, or to the left. And that helps tremendously. Just knowing that you have 3 options on how to center a subject or how to center a photo helps. When I say depth of field, I don't necessarily mean your aperture, but I do mean that you have, at least 2 to 3 different focal points in your image, meaning that you could have something very, very close, and I can kind of show this. If you have something very close in the image, this right here is creating one point of field. I'm the second point, and then what's behind me is the third point of field. So if you have something very close and then you wanted to focus on something very, very close, let me see if I could do this. Oh, it just went to my face. Let me go back, because that's probably not the best thing to do. But yeah, if this were to be really close, this is still 3. It's 1 right here is in the foreground. I'm in the midground, that's 2, and then the background is going to be 3. So whenever you're thinking about making those compositions, always think about those 3 things. Your depth of field is your foreground, your midground, and your background, and that helps create composition. The final thing is motion. Implying motion helps only if you're doing like action sports and things like that. I want to adjust this. I feel like it's off now. But anyway, back to this. So CLC is color, lighting, and composition. That's one way to dramatically improve the way that you show your images. And let's jump into some Q&A time. Let's see here. Mike asks recommendations for lighting an interview. Thanks, Mike, for asking that question. And I would say these are my answers. Just 3 easy things. Is you want to separate the person from the background with light, and I can demonstrate this for you real quick. I am using like this little LifeX light. I have a light to the right, just right behind me, and the cool thing is I could just pop it on with my phone. So when I pop it on, what just happened is now, like on my shoulder and on my face, there is a bit more definition of light. So there's kind of like this balance. So I'm even more defined from the background than before. So when you have an interview style, 3-point lighting is good. You have your first light, which is your key, and then you also want to have a second light either behind them, or you can actually point this light at them, your subject, or you can point it at the wall. And that's going to give you it's going to separate your subject more. So people will pay attention to your subject more. I'm going to turn it off because I kind of like the high contrasty look. But yeah, that's one thing. The second thing I would say is finding a good key light. The Aputure 120D is a great key light. It's pretty expensive. It goes for about $650, but you can get a paper lantern from IKEA or from Walmart and put, like a LifeX bulb in there. And then that works really great too. And you want to have that as your key light. It's in front of your subject so it can light their face. And the final thing when it comes to lighting an interview is make sure the face is not overexposed. You don't want to have that really white spot on their face from overexposure, because when you bring that into your editing software, it's just going to be distracting. And then when you try and get it out, it's going to be very difficult unless you're like a professional color grader. So yeah, I would say use a spot meter. And if you can't afford some of the top end spot meters, there's one, it's called the Lumu Light Meter, and it's an attachment for your iPhone. This thing is fantastic. It's cheap. It comes in about $260, which is cheap for a light meter. But say you don't have that kind of cash, still download the Lumu Light app for your iPhone, because the spot meter is free, meaning that you can point your phone at your subject and it's going to tell you the proper aperture, the proper ISO, and it's just going to give you all that information in one easy location, and it's free. It's better than what the camera has to offer. So those would be my 3 things. So if you have any questions for me about visual marketing, about making beautiful images, I would love to help out. You can drop you can drop a comment below, or you can hit me up on Twitter at any time. So thank you guys for watching, and until we chat again, I hope you tell the world a great story. Peace.